Приехали, да? Совсем небезопасно. Тут так надо делить, на самом деле, информацию всегда.
Since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, troops on both sides have used armor, drones, anti-aircraft defense systems and countless other technologies that have emerged in recent decades. However, for infantry, a war strategy that emerged over 100 years ago remains effective, practical and very popular, the famous trench. To understand its emergence, let's go back to the beginning of the First World War. After the assassination of the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, the Austro-Hungarian Empire declared war against the Serbs on August 1, 1914, receiving support from the German Empire. Soon after, France and the Russian Empire became involved in the conflict, giving military support to Serbia. From then on, the agreements signed between the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance placed the major economic powers in an exhausting and painful conflict. The military balance between the nations involved in the war meant that the battles dragged on for more than 4 years. Between the months of August and November 1914, the First World War was marked by the period of the so-called War of Movement. In this initial phase, the concentration of German troops on the French border was observed so that they could, in a short time, invade the city of Paris. According to German military planning, this first achievement would be of fundamental importance, but German troops were stopped by the British Expeditionary Force. Then, the victory of the Triple Entente at the Battle of the Marne saved France from surrender. The outbreak of such results in the conflict and the beginning of the use of gases as chemical weapons on the battlefield ended the War of Movement and brought greater balance in the following battles. From 1915, the war entered a new phase called trench warfare. Military advance on both sides was limited, and each victory was won at enormous financial and human cost. Entire armies crashed into trenches filled with barbed wire and mud, where the propensity for epidemics and freezing temperatures fostered their own carnage. Trenches were long excavations made in the ground that served as shelter for troops and were protected with obstacles such as barbed wire and land mines. Protection was also reinforced with walls made of sandbags in front of and behind the trenches. The excavations were deep enough for the fighters to stand in and fully protected, i.e. they were approximately 2 meters deep. In this way, the observations were made with equipment, as leaving the protection of the trenches would probably be fatal. Furthermore, the trenches were narrow and very long. However, dimensions may vary according to the needs and resources available to the troop. Between 2 lines of enemy trenches was a land called No Man's Land. They got that name because none of the combat troops held that area. This region was the most vulnerable to enemy attacks. Despite serving as shelter for combatants, the trenches were extremely unhealthy places. There were floods, animals, like rats and cockroaches, epidemics, lack of food, lack of drinking water and corpses that rotted in the trenches due to the difficulty of removing them. Due to the floods, the trenches had to be lined with wood, so that the earth would not sag. In addition to bringing diseases and terrible conditions for the combatants, the floods also damaged the weapons and ammunition that were there. Trenches were used for both offense and defense. Combat did not occur all the time during trench warfare, that is, at various times the combatants were not in conflict, but rather observing. In this way, trench warfare has the characteristic of being static. This factor was responsible for the long duration of this phase of the Great War. The infantry's advance was slow, as none of the squadrons had the means to advance quickly into enemy territory. That is until the invention of armored tanks. When there was confrontation, attacks were made with cannons and planes. In addition to these techniques, the release of toxic gases, such as mustard gas, chlorine gas, and phosgene, was also one of the attacks used to expel fighters from the trenches. Despite being a totally different conflict from the one that occurred more than 100 years ago, in the current conflict the trench has played a fundamental role in the defense and rearguard of both troops. Now check out some excerpts where Russian and Ukrainian soldiers protect themselves from this terrible conflict that seems to have no end date.
Выкапывай! Выкапывай!
Давай, давай.
Завалило! Выкапывай!
Капай дальше. Блядь, нихуя не чую. Давай, давай, тяни его. Відкапуй дальше.
Я намагаюся, я копаю. Чекай, дай розкопаю. Все нормально, живий, живий, живий. Можеш рухатись.
Блядь, придавило ще одну руку.
Пацани, розкапуйте зі свого боку.
Давайте быстріше, блядь, відкапуй. Або дай я, якщо не можеш. Виходь.
Серега, все нормально, зараз витащимо.
Да не спеши. Я все нормально чувствую. Вроде бы. Братан, давай. Руку шевелиться. Давай, братан. Руку. Руку тяни. Скажи, хай поможу там, блядь.
Пошел, пошел, пошел.
Все, вперед, туди пішли, блядь.
Серега, ты как? Отлично. Нормально?
Отлично.
Давай, 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 надо. Нормально?
Нормально. Гудить все.
Все нормально, Серега, живи. Головне, що живий.
А? Там не в рюкзаку, воно в моїй РПС-ки. Ззаді.
Погняло в тебе буде крот. Погняло в тебе буде крот.
Я в рот не впав. Блять, ну поки що 2 короба нормально. Нормально 2 короба, плюс. Тільки мені треба вийти на ту. Вони де працюють? Де підари?
Друже, не можу знати, сам хотів запитати.
Я взагалі ніхто не пам'ятаю. Гудить все в голові.
Сиди, не відсвічуй, все буде добре.
Такі прогулки, блядь.
Сапери, ваші пішли, перша партія.
Я не знаю.
Перша партія заходила в бліндаж.
Куди?
Отой.
Оцей бліндаж. Там
Справа зразу зайшли.
Та вот же ж вони.
Да, ми тут. Частково. А, рядышком кладут.
Да, Владимир Ильич, дальше лучше не поедем.
Не-не, я б на вашем месте не рисковал.
Это да, да.
Ну-ка, верну. Пока прыгал, ага, дымичку. Вывернули ногу. А, дымичку? Хотели, надо включить. Спасибо. Нужная вещь. Здесь пригодится.
Приехали, да? Совсем небезопасно. Тут так надо делить, на самом деле, информацию всегда. Потому что сначала безопасно, потом в один миг раз уже прилет.
Поехали, пацаны, поехали. Все, давайте, ребят. Погнали.
Держим оба. Что, с боевым крещением? Лично меня точно.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, give it a like and support this channel. Sign up and mark the bell to receive the notifications from new videos.